Hi, I'm Ryan Szymanski, curator for Battleship New Jersey Museum and Memorial. And today we've got the first video in an installment that I'm going to call Naval News for now until we come up with a better name. But we try to tie all of our videos back into the battleship, but sometimes there's some really cool naval history stuff happening that doesn't really have that direct of a connection. So we want to, maybe it'll be once a week, depending on how often cool stuff is happening. Maybe it'll be less frequently than that. But we want to do a series about things happening in like World War II naval history or other stuff that kind of loosely ties into the museum, but doesn't have that direct connection that many of our other videos do. So today's video, we're going to be talking about the wreck of USS Edsel and how cool it is that we finally found that ship. Edsel is one of the World War I designed four-stack destroyers that was with the Asiatic Squadron at the beginning of World War II. Edsel is also famous because she captures a Japanese trawler which gets used by Australian Special Forces as the MV Crate, and they use Crate for several Special Forces operations during World War II and probably into the Cold War, and Crate survives to this day as a museum ship in the Australian National Museum's collection. She does some really cool stuff for the first couple months of the war, and at the point that the Japanese have overrun the Philippines and the Dutch East Indies and all those other colonies, she's part of the group of ships that's trying to escape the area, and she never makes it. And there are no survivors, so nobody knows what happens to the ship except the Japanese. Even though there's great Japanese sources, Western historians don't really have that much information. So during the war, virtually nothing is known about the ship except she never makes it to where she's going. And it's really interesting. When ships go down in this glorious fashion, they get almost like a step up. Destroyer escorts become full destroyers, or older destroyers become new destroyers. Ships like Yorktown and Hornet and Lexington all get new aircraft carriers named after them of a bigger and better class. But when ships are lost in combat and it's not as glorious, USS Stewart, a four-stack destroyer being destroyed in dry dock, they name a destroyer Escort after her. She doesn't get that latest, newest, and greatest. Likewise, Edsel gets a destroyer escort named after her. Houston goes down and all of her survivors are captured by the Japanese. She gets degraded from heavy cruiser, and the next ship named after her is a light cruiser. Instead of, we're building Baltimores and Clevelands at the same time, instead of maintaining that heavy cruiser namesake, it gets pushed off onto the Cleveland class. But now, years after the war, now that those folks who have survived have been repatriated, or we've gotten access to these Japanese stories, we found out that these ships did really cool things, and Edsel is one of them. She gets a destroyer escort named after her after the ship just goes missing with her entire crew. But we now know that she went down fighting against tremendous odds. Edsel's wreck was discovered last year, but it wasn't confirmed until Armistice Day / Veterans Day of this year, and that's when the news report went out with a really great side-scan sonar image of the port side of the ship. And it very clearly shows a four-stack destroyer. Her deck houses are all intact. It seems like all of her funnels are gone. You can even see protrusions at the bow and at some other places that make it look like her guns are still intact. There's a protrusion near the boat deck that seems to show her torpedo tubes trained overboard. Really great resolution sonar image of the ship. I just wish that we had one of the opposite side of the ship, because the Japanese recorded about 90 seconds of footage of her being sunk. And it seems like it's her starboard side that is being engaged by battleship and heavy cruiser caliber shells. The footage itself is pretty grainy. Here's a picture that's been pulled from that and blown up so you can see the ship being absolutely rocked by 14-inch shell splashes. You can see that these splashes are significantly bigger than the ship itself. So what happened with Edsel? Edsel is transporting Army Air Corps personnel in the Dutch East Indies. They're taking the people to the aircraft so that they can get the aircraft functioning and flying. And she receives a distress call. We know the distress call was sent very near where she is sunk. So we believe that she receives a distress call from an Allied merchant ship that's being attacked by some of the Japanese ships in the area. And we believe that she responds to that to pick up survivors and is caught by the heavy cruisers Tone and Chikuma, which are normally operating with the Kido Butai. These two cruisers fire at her for a long time and are unable to sink her because she's chasing shell splashes, she's using smoke screens, all the same stuff that you see our tin cans doing off Samar a couple of years later. But this isn't a brand new Fletcher-class destroyer or destroyer escort. This is an old ship that's been in the Far East for decades. Admiral Gunichi Mukawa, who will be famous in a couple of months for his actions during the battle off Savile Island, comes in with his two battleships, Hiei and Kurishima, two more famous ships that are operating with the Kido Butai, and we'll see them pop up later on in 1942. They both get their comeuppance by the end of the year. But they show up and start shelling Edsel, and they score a few minor hits or near misses that don't impact Edsel's ability to continue steaming and dodging fire. So they have to call Kido Butai, and Nagumo sends 26 aircraft from Soryu, Hiryu, and Kaga, dive bombers, to take her out. Lieutenant Tominaga, who will become famous at the Battle of Midway in 4 months, who leads one of the strikes on Yorktown that's successful, is a part of this strike, and they're only able to score one hit and one near miss, but that's enough to slow the ship down, and finally, after expending a tremendous amount of ammunition, the two heavy cruisers and two battleships are able to sink Edsel. There are survivors from the wreck. A submarine threat has the Japanese fleet withdraw, with many of the survivors still in the water, and they almost certainly succumb to exposure because they're not rescued. A handful, and it's unknown exactly how many, are pulled from the water, it's believed on Chikuma, and none of them survived the war. We believe that they were beheaded in a POW camp along with many others, and there have been mass graves found with American sailors in them that we believe are the survivors from Edsel, but we don't know who they are. So it's exciting to see the wreck found in about 2 miles of water, and it'll be interesting to see as further surveys and further information comes out what the condition of the wreck is, what sank her, how much damage she took. But regardless, she went down in the finest traditions of the Navy, and it'll be interesting to see if her name is reused on a modern ship in the near future. So that's just a little bit of the background on what I think is some really cool naval news that's happening. And since there's so much wreck exploration happening right now, new ships being commissioned, other stuff like that going on, we're going to continue to do videos like this in the near future. If you come up with some naval history, recent events, go over to my Facebook page, link down below, and shoot us a message with it, and we might make a video about it in the future. But we're hoping to make this an ongoing series. Battleship New Jersey receives operating support from the New Jersey Department of State, also from a number of other businesses and private individuals like yourselves. We really appreciate your support. There's a link in the description below if you'd like to donate to support the museum. You can also support us by liking, sharing, and subscribing so more people find about us and the channel. Thanks for watching.